Hey everybody, it's Tasha, and this is my recap and review for Arrow Season 6, Episode 7, Thanksgiving. This episode gave me a lot of feelings. There were some intense emotional beats, and the center of it was the relationship between Oliver and Dig. But we did get to see a lot of other relationship dynamics, such as between Quentin and Dinah, Felicity and Curtis, and Oliver and William. We even got to see a bit of the Queen family 2.0 with William, Felicity, and Oliver. I will continue to commend the writers for how they are handling this relationship. The shift has been smooth and natural, and it's wonderful to see Oliver and Felicity be calm and steady in their commitment to each other and the family they're building. Like I've said before, I have no problem with drama, but I prefer when it happens outside of their relationship instead of them being the middle of it. Okay, let's get into the recap. The episode starts off with Oliver, Felicity, and William at a food drive outside the new police station. I like that these two things are tied together because we get to see just how much Oliver is actually doing for the city without the mask. Unfortunately, the events get interrupted by Agent Watson, who decides to arrest Oliver right then and there, making it a public spectacle. So I'm going to start off by saying that I have been very understanding of Agent Watson doing her job. I feel that she is fully justified in her belief that vigilantism can be an issue when they have people like Vigilante running around murdering people. But this episode didn't feel like a woman dedicated to doing her duty. This felt like a woman with a vendetta. And that's where it becomes a problem. Tact is a thing for a reason. And while it made sense for her to arrest Oliver if she had evidence, her deciding to do it in front of his son, a son she knows just lost his mother, was really petty. Now I feel like she has some kind of agenda. So Watson marches Oliver into the station, making the mayor the first person booked in the new state-of-the-art facility. She says she has evidence that he is the Arrow and tries to intimidate him into incriminating himself, but Oliver isn't that easily played. He demands to see William, and he has to reassure his son that he gave up that life and he doesn't have to worry, which unfortunately is a lie. Oliver gets processed, and while he settles into his cell, we find out that Black Siren is back, along with her partner, Caden James, and they are stealing nanotech. The team doesn't find out until it's too late because Caden James worked his way around Felicity's alerts. Instead of stopping the theft, Curtis is injecting Dig with a new prototype he is developing to help with his tremors, while Felicity goes to Oliver's arraignment. That's when we find out that the FBI supposedly has more evidence than just a doctored photo to prove Oliver is the Arrow. Side note, this is making me wonder where Samantha got this information from, and if Caden is feeding her tips and leads to help keep the team distracted, and she's just so laser focused that she doesn't realize she's being used. Back at the arraignment, the judge decides to release Oliver on bail. Since he's the mayor and a single father, he isn't likely to run. But he does stipulate that there is a $5 million bail. Felicity decides to use some of the money from the startup as collateral, which is one of many decisions Felicity has made that upsets Curtis. But he is making some interesting calls of his own because he didn't tell Felicity that he was going to use his little experiment on Dig. Felicity actually still didn't know about Dig's injury at all. Of course, when she finds out, she's worried about John, because by this point, there's been another theft. This time, the break-in is at Amertech, where Siren has stolen 100 pounds of explosive, and Green Diggle wasn't able to stop her because he had a severe reaction to the mixture of the steroid he was taking with the new prototype Curtis gave him, and he collapsed, ending up in the hospital. I have to say, I was a bit annoyed with Curtis because while Felicity was wrong to name the company without speaking to him, that is in no way comparable to him deciding to inject her oldest friend with a drug they were testing and not mention it. But they both realized that they had bigger fish to fry than their communication issues because Caden James now had the ingredients he needed to create a thermovaric weapon which could detonate and kill thousands of people. While they got to work figuring out where the weapon could be, Oliver went to go visit Dig in the hospital, where they had a very harsh and real conversation about the sacrifices Dig has made and his motives behind them. At first, I was a bit frustrated with Dig because it felt like he was attacking Oliver and blaming him when in fact he did have a choice whether or not he became the Green Arrow. So I fully understood when Oliver's first reaction was frustration and disappointment. But in their second conversation, things became a bit more clear. Dig was right. He has always put Oliver first. Oliver's mission and his family have always gone above himself. And Oliver hasn't always done the same for him. I mean, Oliver did in fact kidnap his wife once. And even if he did it for the right reasons, that is not something Dig would have ever done. And while Dig always had a sense of duty to protect the city, it was mostly about him helping Oliver fulfill his purpose and less about what Dig wanted for himself. I like that they tied this storyline back to the Heroes versus Aliens crossover from last year, because many people, myself included, wondered why it was that in this supposed ideal life, Dig wasn't living happily with Lila, but instead he was the Hood. And I'm glad that they addressed this. Dig has gone through a lot, and because he always seems so steady and level-headed, it's easy to forget that he has his own demons. He killed during the war, and he came back home and started working with the vigilante. He got married and had a daughter, only to have that daughter replaced with a son. His brother Andy came back from the dead, only to help cause Laurel's death, and then ended up dying at his hand. And when he rejoined the army to get a sense of normalcy and stability, that blew up in his face because his commanding officer betrayed him and framed him. So Dig has gone through a lot of his own trials, and being the Hood means something to him that's much more than carrying on Oliver's legacy. And by the end of the conversation, they both seem to really realize that and have a better understanding of each other, and their friendship is back on track. But for now, Dig is benched, so Oliver has to suit up because Caden James has a bomb that it looks like he's going to detonate at a Billy Joel concert. I'm sure the writers and producers were in bliss for this, because if I remember correctly, they're huge fans and may have even named a few episodes after song titles. So Oliver heads out with the team to stop the bomb and comes face to face with James, who has set up the perfect trap because he has his men dressed as cops and they're blocking the exits of the stadium where the concert is being held. So while the team tries to subdue these imposters, it looks as though they're attacking civil servants. This is only made worse when they find out that the bomb is a dud. He did it to lure the Arrow there because he wanted to let him know that they have a history. He lost his son and he believes that Green Arrow is the cause, so he intends to destroy what Oliver holds dear to get his revenge. His plan goes perfectly because the next day, footage of Team Arrow putting down all those fake cops goes viral and the city votes against the referendum. So now, if any vigilante is caught, they will be arrested. It raises the stakes for Oliver because he's stepping in for Dig and he's already on trial for a number of counts of murder. The episode ends with Queen Family 2.0 going to visit Dig in the hospital to give him a ride home, and we finally get a scene between Uncle Dig and William. They are very much a family, and while I have grown to really enjoy the newbies, there's still nothing better than OTA. But the moment is still slightly tainted because William is a smart kid and he quickly questions how the attack at the stadium was stopped if the Green Arrow was in the hospital. So Oliver lies to him. And that can't end well. I'm honestly hoping that they don't spawn distrust between them now that things are going well, and that William will eventually realize that his father is needed as the Green Arrow. I want him to be the one to tell Oliver that it's all right. And I'm hoping that after the crossover happens and things stabilize in his home life, like Felicity moving in, he'll feel more secure that he won't be alone if something was to ever happen to Oliver. And he also has his Aunt Thea, who is now finally awake. And I'm so glad she's back. I am here for William and Thea bonding while Oliver and Felicity are on Earth X. The last thing I want to mention is the interaction between Quentin and Dinah. It was a minor part of the episode, but they did have a really interesting conversation about responsibility and guilt. Quentin for Black Siren and Dinah for Vigilante. I really liked the relationship forming between them. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about it because it felt like they were replacing Laurel, who, while she wasn't my favorite character, I did enjoy her and Quentin's dynamic. But now I feel that this is what his character needs. And since it's part of the narrative that she wanted Black Canary's legacy to go on after her, it makes sense that she would also want someone to be there for her father. All in all, this was another really solid episode. And while I'm not quite sure where the story arc is heading for the season, they are definitely setting up some interesting conflicts for later. We'll have to wait and see how William will react to Oliver returning to life in green leather, and if there will be any resentment from Diggle when Oliver decides to retake his role permanently. I'm also curious as to why Agent Watson had to return to Washington so suddenly, and if she has any nefarious motives or connections with Caden James or even Richard Dragon. Anyway, what did you guys think of the episode? Let me know in the comments down below. And FYI, I will be doing recaps for all the episodes of the crossover, and then I'll probably do a final thoughts and favorite moments video. We'll see if my prediction from September for the Olicity wedding comes through.